The crystalline spires of the Galactic Academy pierced the violet sky of Centaurus Prime, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 distant suns. Inside the grand amphitheater, 2,000 of the galaxy's brightest minds sat in perfect silence, their attention fixed on the towering figure of Professor Zenith. The Arcturian's crystalline form shifted colors as he moved, a sign of the intense computational processes running through his silicon-based neural network. Sarah Chen sat in the last row, the only human in a sea of alien species. Her simple carbon-based biology made her an anomaly among her peers, most of whom possessed natural quantum computing capabilities or neural interfaces that connected directly to the Academy's vast knowledge networks. She adjusted her standard-issue uniform, feeling the rough fabric against her skin, another reminder of her biological nature in this world of advanced materials and synthetic constructs. Professor Zenith's voice resonated through the chamber, each word precisely modulated. For 3 millennia, the Quantum Bridge Challenge has remained unsolved. Each year, we present it to our newest students, hoping to find the one mind capable of understanding its complexity. His crystalline form pulsed with deep blue light. Today, you join this legacy of attempt, and thus far, failure. The holographic display at the center of the amphitheater sparked to life, showing a massive quantum bridge connecting 2 distant galaxies. The structure twisted and writhed, its very existence defying conventional physics. The bridge's golden light pulsed erratically, each flutter sending ripples through the fabric of space-time. This bridge, constructed by the ancient precursors, is failing, Zenith continued. Your challenge is to calculate the exact moment of its collapse, accounting for all quantum variables, dark matter interference, and temporal distortions. You have 1 standard rotation of this planet, approximately 30 hours, to submit your solutions. A Medusan student near Sarah let out a soft whistle, their tentacles writhing in anxiety. Impossible, they muttered, their translator barely catching the word. Even with full neural integration into the Academy's quantum computers, the variables are too numerous. Sarah watched as her classmates activated their various computational aids, the air filled with the soft hum of quantum processors and the subtle vibration of neural networks connecting to the Academy's mainframe. The Viridian student to her left had already generated a holographic workspace filled with complex equations that would make Earth's most advanced supercomputers seem like ancient calculators. But Sarah didn't reach for any technology. Instead, she pulled out a simple notebook and pencil, tools so primitive that several nearby students stared in disbelief. The Medusan's tentacles twisted in what might have been amusement or confusion, a human using analog tools. The translator conveyed their incredulity. The challenge requires quantum-level calculations. You cannot possibly. Sarah ignored them, her eyes fixed on the holographic bridge. Where others saw chaos, she began to see patterns. Growing up on Earth, she had spent countless hours watching ocean waves crash against rocky shores, studying the way wind shaped clouds into complex formations, and observing how crowds of people moved through busy streets. Nature had taught her that within chaos lay patterns, waiting to be discovered by those who knew how to look. Professor Zenith moved through the amphitheater, his crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns. He paused briefly near Sarah, his sensory arrays focusing on her primitive tools. Interesting, he commented, the word carrying layers of meaning in his harmonically complex voice. You choose to face quantum complexity with graphite and cellulose. Sarah looked up, meeting his gaze steadily. Sometimes the simplest tools reveal what complex systems obscure, Professor. Her voice was calm, confident without being arrogant. She had already noticed something about the bridge's fluctuations, a rhythm that reminded her of the way autumn leaves danced in turbulent air currents back home. The professor's color shifted to a deep indigo, a sign of intrigue in his species. Without another word, he moved on, leaving Sarah to her work. Around her, the air continued to fill with the hum of quantum calculations and the frustrated murmurs of students grappling with the challenge's complexity. Sarah's pencil moved across the paper, not writing equations but sketching patterns. She was mapping the dance of quantum energies, translating the complex fluctuations into something her human mind could grasp. There was music in the chaos, a symphony of probability and chance that reminded her of Earth's weather patterns and the flow of crowds through city streets. As the first hour passed, she began to see it clearly. The bridge wasn't just failing randomly. Its collapse followed patterns similar to those she'd observed in natural systems back home. The quantum fluctuations mimicked the way sand dunes shifted in desert winds, how traffic jams propagated through busy highways, how avalanches built up before their inevitable release. What her alien classmates saw as an impossibly complex quantum problem, she recognized as something fundamentally natural. The bridge wasn't defying physics. It was following the same basic principles that governed all complex systems in the universe. Her human perspective, shaped by evolution on a planet of chaos and change, let her see what their quantum computers couldn't process, the simple truth hidden within the complexity. The second hour brought a wave of frustration through the grand amphitheater. Quantum displays flickered as students pushed their computational systems to their limits. The air shimmered with discarded holographic models, each one representing another failed attempt to predict the bridge's collapse. The Viridian student beside Sarah, whose name was X427, had generated over 3,000 probabilistic models. Each one contradicted the last, creating a cascade of conflicting data that only added to the confusion. Their bioluminescent markings pulsed with stress patterns, creating interference with their neural interface. The variables keep shifting, X427 muttered, their translator struggling to convey their mounting frustration. Every time I account for one quantum fluctuation, 3 more appear. It's like trying to count grains of sand in a windstorm. Sarah continued her work, her pencil moving in steady strokes across the paper. She had filled several pages not with equations, but with interconnected drawings that seemed meaningless to her alien classmates. To her, they represented the flow patterns she'd observed in the bridge's quantum field, similar to the way water moved around rocks in a stream. Professor Zenith's voice cut through the ambient hum of processors. Your time is 1/6 complete. I note that none of you have submitted a solution. His crystalline form shifted to a deep purple, indicating both amusement and disappointment. Perhaps you are approaching the problem from the wrong perspective. A hive mind collective near the front, composed of thousands of microscopic organisms working in perfect synchronization, spoke up. Professor, we have applied every known mathematical model. The quantum variations exceed our predictive capabilities. Then perhaps, the professor responded, his tone carrying harmonics of challenge, your predictive capabilities are insufficient for this task. Sarah's hand paused above her paper. She had been watching the bridge's fluctuations with increasing certainty. The pattern was becoming clearer, not in the quantum calculations her classmates were so focused on, but in the larger rhythm of the structure's movement. It reminded her of watching waves approach a beach, how the timing of their collapse could be predicted not by measuring each water molecule, but by understanding the broader patterns of tide and wind. The Medusan student had given up on their calculations and was now watching Sarah with all 7 eye stalks. You haven't even connected to the quantum network, they observed. What could you possibly be seeing with such primitive tools? Sarah smiled slightly. Sometimes you need to step back to see the whole picture. Your quantum computers are trying to predict the movement of every particle, but they're missing the dance. Dance. The Medusan's translator crackled with confusion. Look at the bridge, Sarah said, pointing to the holographic display. Not the quantum fluctuations, but its overall movement. Remind you of anything natural? The Medusan's eye stalks swayed in confusion. Their species had evolved in the perfectly regulated environments of their orbital habitats. The concept of natural phenomena was foreign to them. Sarah stood up, approaching the central hologram. Her movement drew attention, countless alien eyes turning to watch the human who dared to approach the display without even activating a neural interface. Professor Zenith's crystalline form shifted to an interested amber as he observed. The bridge isn't just a quantum structure. Sarah explained, her voice carrying clearly through the amphitheater. It's a system in motion, like a river meeting the sea or wind shaping clouds. The quantum fluctuations aren't random. They're following patterns that repeat on multiple scales. She gestured to the bridge's largest oscillations. See this movement? It's like a heartbeat, a rhythm that repeats every 17 seconds. And within that rhythm, smaller patterns emerge and dissolve, like eddies in a stream. The other students stared at her, their various sensory organs struggling to comprehend this primitive approach. Some activated new scanning protocols, trying to detect what the human could see with her simple organic eyes. Professor Zenith moved closer, his crystalline surface refracting light in complex patterns. "Continue," he encouraged, his voice carrying undertones of genuine curiosity. "The bridge isn't failing because of quantum instability," Sarah said, her confidence growing. "It's failing because it's reaching a natural tipping point, like an avalanche about to break free. All these quantum fluctuations, they're just the small shifts that precede the big one." She turned to face her classmates, seeing the mixture of skepticism and curiosity in their alien faces. "You're all trying to calculate the exact position and momentum of every quantum particle. But that's not how nature works. Complex systems don't fail because of individual particles. They fail when the entire pattern reaches a critical point." The hive mind collective buzzed with interest, their microscopic components reorganizing to process this new perspective. X-427's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a thoughtful blue. Even the Medusan's tentacles had stopped their anxious writhing, now focused intently on Sarah's words. Professor Zenith's form pulsed with an intense golden light, a color Sarah had never seen him display before. "You believe you can predict the bridge's collapse without quantum calculations." His voice carried both challenge and intrigue. Sarah nodded, holding up her notebook. "I already have. The pattern is clear once you stop trying to measure every variable and start watching the dance of the whole system. The bridge will collapse in exactly 17 hours, 23 minutes, and 42 seconds from now." Silence fell over the grand amphitheater, heavier than the gravitational pull of a neutron star. The quantum processor's ambient hum faded as students stopped their calculations to process Sarah's statement. Her prediction, offered without a single quantum computation, seemed to violate everything they understood about scientific methodology. The hive mind collective was the first to react, their microscopic components swirling in patterns of agitation. "Impossible. The human's prediction contradicts established quantum temporal theory. Without computational analysis, the margin of error would be astronomical." Professor Zenith raised a crystalline appendage, silencing the growing murmurs. "Yet she has provided a specific prediction, while your quantum models remain inconclusive." His form shifted through spectrums of light as he addressed Sarah. "Explain your reasoning to your peers, Ms. Chen. Help them understand how you arrived at this conclusion." Sarah walked to the center of the amphitheater, her footsteps echoing in the tense silence. The holographic bridge pulsed above her, its quantum fluctuations painting patterns of light across her face. She took a deep breath, remembering her grandmother's teachings about the patterns hidden in Shanghai's crowded streets and bustling markets. "On Earth, we live with chaos every day," she began. "Our weather systems are unpredictable, our tectonic plates shift and crack, our oceans surge with countless interconnected currents. We evolved to see patterns in this chaos, to understand complex systems not by measuring their components, but by observing their behavior as a whole." She gestured to the bridge. "Look at how the quantum field bunches and flows here, like water approaching a waterfall. There's a rhythm to it, a natural progression that follows the same principles we see in any system approaching a critical point." X-427's bioluminescent patterns flickered with skepticism. "But without quantum calculations, how can you account for dark matter interference, for temporal distortions, for the multidimensional aspects of the bridge's structure?" Sarah smiled. "The same way a surfer knows when to catch a wave without calculating water molecules, or how a farmer predicts rain without modeling atmospheric physics. Some patterns transcend individual components. They emerge at a higher level, visible to those who know how to look. The Medusan's tentacles twisted in what might have been frustration. This is not science. This is intuition. Guesswork. Is it? Professor Zenith interjected, his crystalline form pulsing with intellectual curiosity. Throughout galactic history, some of the most significant breakthroughs came from insights that preceded formal proof. The question is not whether Ms. Chen's method follows our conventional approach, but whether it yields correct results. The professor turned to address the entire amphitheater. Your species evolved in environments of order and predictability. Your computational abilities developed to handle discrete, manageable variables. But humans, he gestured to Sarah, they evolved on a planet that defies computational analysis. Their neural networks developed not to calculate, but to recognize patterns too complex for simple mathematics. Sarah nodded, understanding flowing between her and the ancient professor. Earth taught us that some truths can't be reached by breaking things down into smaller parts. Sometimes you have to step back and see the whole picture. She pointed to specific features of the bridge's structure. These quantum fluctuations aren't random noise. They're echoes of the bridge's fundamental pattern. Like ripples spreading from a stone dropped in water, they tell us about the forces at work. The bridge isn't just a quantum structure. It's a natural system following natural laws. The hive mind collective buzzed with new intensity. But natural laws are expressed through mathematics, through precise calculations. Yes, Sarah agreed, but nature doesn't solve equations to decide how to behave. The mathematics describes the pattern. It doesn't create it. We've been so focused on describing the bridge's behavior that we've forgotten to simply observe it. Professor Zenith moved to the holographic display, his crystalline form refracting the light in complex patterns. Consider this. For 3 millennia, we have approached this challenge with increasingly powerful quantum computers. Each year, we add more variables, more computational power, more complexity to our models. And each year, we fail. He turned to face his students, his form glowing with an intense white light. Perhaps this human perspective offers something our advanced technology cannot. The ability to see simplicity within complexity, to recognize patterns that emerge from chaos, rather than trying to predict every quantum fluctuation. The amphitheater erupted in discussion, thousands of alien minds grappling with this radical departure from their established methods. Some students began deactivating their quantum interfaces, trying to see the bridge with their natural senses. Others doubled down on their calculations, determined to prove or disprove Sarah's prediction through conventional means. Sarah returned to her seat, aware of the intellectual storm she had unleashed. She opened her notebook again, adding a few final observations to her sketches. The bridge continued its complex dance above them, its patterns clear as day to her human eyes. Patterns that told of an ending approaching as inevitably as night follows day. Hours ticked by in the grand amphitheater, each moment charged with anticipation. The quantum bridge's holographic representation dominated the chamber, its fluctuations growing more pronounced as time passed. According to Sarah's prediction, they were now just 3 hours away from the critical moment. Many students had abandoned their quantum interfaces, attempting to see what Sarah saw. The hive mind collective had reconfigured itself into new patterns, trying to mimic human neural architecture. X427's bioluminescent displays now pulsed in sync with the bridge's larger oscillations, searching for the rhythm Sarah had described. Professor Zenith had not moved for the past hour, his crystalline form locked in deep observation mode. The surface of his body reflected and refracted the bridge's light in increasingly complex patterns, creating a secondary display that tracked changes too subtle for most observers to notice. The amplitude of the quantum fluctuations has increased by 12%, announced the Medusan, their tentacles weaving complex patterns in the air. But the pattern remains consistent with the human's prediction. Sarah sat quietly, continuing to sketch in her notebook. She had added new details to her drawings, tracking subtle changes in the bridge's behavior. To her, It was like watching storm clouds gather before a thunderstorm. The signs were there for anyone who knew how to read them. Ms. Chen, Professor Zenith's voice carried new harmonics of curiosity. Would you share with us what changes you've observed in the past hour? Sarah stood, approaching the holographic display once more. The bridge's primary oscillation has shifted its frequency slightly, like a guitar string being slowly tightened. The smaller patterns are starting to synchronize, flowing together instead of against each other. It's similar to how water droplets merge just before they fall. The Hive Mind Collective buzzed with excitement. We have detected the frequency shift. Our new pattern recognition protocols confirm the human's observation. But how did you anticipate this hours ago? Because I've seen it before, Sarah explained, her voice soft but carrying clearly through the chamber. Not in quantum bridges, but in natural systems on Earth. When complex systems approach a critical point, they often show similar behaviors, regardless of scale or specific components. She pointed to a particular section of the bridge where the quantum fluctuations seem to spiral inward. Look here, this reminds me of how hurricanes form on Earth. Different forces and scales, but the same fundamental pattern of a system organizing itself before a major change. Professor Zenith's form pulsed with intense light. You are describing what we call unified pattern theory. The idea that certain fundamental patterns repeat throughout the universe, from quantum to cosmic scales. But this theory has always been more philosophy than practical science. On Earth, it's survival, Sarah responded. Our planet is so complex that we had to develop pattern recognition just to function. We learned to see connections between different systems, to understand how small changes can signal bigger ones coming. The chamber's atmosphere grew tenser as they entered the final hour. The bridge's fluctuations had become more pronounced, visible even without enhanced perception. The quantum field rippled and swirled in increasingly complex patterns, like water beginning to boil. X-427 had given up entirely on their quantum calculations, their attention fully focused on observing the bridge's movement. I think I'm starting to see it, they announced, their translator struggling to convey their excitement. The way the patterns flow into each other, how smaller movements combine into larger ones. It's like music. Yes, Sarah smiled. That's exactly it. Nature has its own rhythm, its own music. Sometimes you have to stop analyzing and just listen. The final minutes approached. The entire amphitheater had fallen into complete silence. Thousands of alien minds focused intently on the bridge. Even those who had doubted Sarah's method couldn't deny the growing signs of instability that matched her prediction. Professor Zenith moved to stand beside Sarah, his crystalline form synchronized with the bridge's pulsations. 30 seconds remaining until your predicted moment, Ms. Chen. Are you still confident in your assessment? Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the bridge. Watch the pattern at the center. See how the quantum fluctuations are starting to spiral inward, like water circling a drain or stars being pulled into a black hole. The critical point is approaching. The final seconds ticked by. The bridge's quantum field began to pulse more rapidly, its patterns shifting faster and faster. Small distortions appeared and disappeared, like ripples in a pond during a rainstorm. 10 seconds, announced Professor Zenith, his voice carrying new harmonics of anticipation. The entire amphitheater counted down silently, watching as the bridge's structure began to shimmer and twist. The quantum field's patterns were now moving so fast they'd blurred together, creating new and complex formations that defied traditional analysis. 3, 2, 1. At the exact moment Sarah had predicted, 17 hours, 23 minutes, and 42 seconds after she made her calculation, the quantum bridge reached its critical point. The center of the structure collapsed inward, creating a cascade of quantum reactions that rippled outward like a wave. The entire bridge twisted, folded, and finally disappeared in a brilliant flash of light that left afterimages dancing in everyone's vision. The afterglow of the bridge's collapse faded slowly, leaving the grand amphitheater in a state of stunned silence. The holographic display now showed only empty space where the ancient structure had stood for millennia. Sarah's notebook lay open on her desk, its simple sketches having predicted what the most advanced quantum computers in the galaxy could not. Professor Zenith's crystalline form cycled through a series of colors never before seen in the chamber, reflecting the profound significance of the moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried harmonics of wonder and revelation. In 3,000 years of presenting this challenge, he began, we have witnessed countless attempts to solve it. The finest minds in the galaxy have applied the most advanced technology, the most sophisticated mathematical models. Yet it was solved not with quantum computation, but with human pattern recognition. The hive mind collective reformed into a new configuration, their microscopic components arranging themselves to better process this paradigm shift. The humans' method was elegant, simple. We had become so focused on complexity that we lost sight of the underlying patterns. Sarah stood up, gathering her notebook and pencil. She could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The initial skepticism had given way to a deeper curiosity. On Earth, we have a saying, she offered. Sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. By focusing too much on individual elements, you miss the larger picture. X427's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with new understanding. Your species evolved in an environment that required pattern recognition for survival. While we developed technology to control our environments, you developed the ability to understand chaos itself. Not control it, Sarah corrected gently. Work with it. Earth taught us that some systems can't be controlled, only understood. The quantum bridge wasn't failing randomly. It was following natural patterns that exist at all scales throughout the universe. Professor Zenith moved to the center of the chamber, his form now stabilized into a deep, thoughtful blue. Today marks more than the solution to an ancient problem. It marks a fundamental shift in how we approach complex systems. The human perspective offers something our advanced technology cannot: the ability to see simplicity within complexity, to recognize patterns that emerge from chaos. The Medusan's tentacles waved in what Sarah had learned was a gesture of respect. Perhaps we have become too reliant on our computational abilities. In seeking to calculate everything, we have forgotten how to observe. This is why the Galactic Academy exists, Professor Zenith announced, his voice reaching every corner of the chamber. Not just to teach what we know, but to discover what we don't. Ms. Chen's solution demonstrates that different evolutionary paths can lead to different but equally valid ways of understanding the universe. Sarah watched as her alien classmates began to disconnect from their quantum interfaces, looking at the empty space where the bridge had been with their natural senses. Some were already sketching their own patterns, trying to understand how they had missed what now seemed obvious. The universe speaks many languages, Sarah said, remembering her grandmother's words. Mathematics is one of them, but so is pattern and rhythm. Sometimes you need both to understand the full story. Professor Zenith's form brightened. Indeed, and perhaps this is the true lesson of today's achievement. The future of galactic science lies not in choosing between computation and intuition, but in learning to combine them. Human pattern recognition, coupled with our advanced technology, could open new frontiers of understanding. The Hive Mind Collective had already begun adapting their protocols, incorporating pattern recognition algorithms inspired by human neural networks. X427's bioluminescent displays now pulsed in rhythms that mimicked natural phenomena, practicing this new way of seeing. As the students filed out of the amphitheater, Sarah heard them discussing new approaches to old problems, wondering what other insights human perspective might offer. She smiled, thinking of Earth with its chaotic weather, its unpredictable geology, its complex ecosystems, the planet that had taught humanity to see patterns in chaos. Professor Zenith approached her one final time. Miss Chen, you have done more than solve an ancient puzzle. You have reminded us that intelligence comes in many forms, and that the path to understanding often requires us to step back from our assumptions and see with new eyes. Sarah nodded, closing her notebook. Inside were the simple sketches that had changed galactic science, proof that sometimes the most profound insights come not from increasing complexity, but from finding the simple patterns that connect all things. As she left the amphitheater, she knew that this was just the beginning. The merger of human intuition with alien technology would open new possibilities, new ways of understanding the universe. The chaos of Earth had prepared humanity not just to survive, but to offer unique insights to the gathered knowledge of 1,000 worlds. The stars shone brightly through the Academy's crystal dome, their patterns clear and beautiful to eyes that knew how to see them.